Hi there. Bet you didn't expect to hear from me again so soon. Yes, it's another night of D&D. We just got done with a 4-hour session with new players. It's different from last night's. I'm doing a campaign log to diary to explain what happened in today's session. Today's session started out with a solo player, Dylan, playing Will, the halfling rogue. Will's rogue started out the campaign with setting foot outside the tavern. The first thing that Will encountered outside the tavern was a pack of children playing in the streets. I made them a mixed races of half orc, human, and one halfling child, a little girl, who noticed him. I had the halfling girl ask Will a few questions. Are you an adventurer? What's that equipment you're wearing? Things like that. This gave Will an interaction to interact with a familiar race, but Will didn't seem too interested in interacting with this little girl and sent her on her way. So I made a quick exit for the little girl, and the adventure moved on. Will's next stop in the city was to go into the bazaar in search of something to buy. This was Dylan's first intention to explore in the city. He wanted to get new gear. This wasn't something he wanted a mechanical benefit for, it's just something he wanted to role play out, which I was more than okay with. So Will goes to the bazaar and starts looking for leather workers. So I told him there are 3 leather working people in the bazaar selling their wares, and described them, each one of them. The first person I described is a docile, genteel old man selling roughshod but passable work. The second was a boisterous dwarf female selling decent work at a decent price with a positive attitude. The final person I described is a haughty woman, a human woman, with a negative attitude, sneering, looking down with fine wares and high prices. The first stop was the first man that I described, so Will first stops to Gaimon. Gaiman. Gaiman, the elder human, has poured a lot of time into his wares, and although they aren't the best in the world, they're more than passable. So the first thing Will was looking for was a set of armor, and Will offered to trade his existing armor for what he considered to be better armor. Seeing that Will's character takes pride in what Will does as an outdoorsman and huntsman, I decided that Gaiman would care about that kind of thing too, being the kind of person who puts a lot of work into his thing for a little pay, does it mostly out of passion and maybe lack of anything else to do. But for whatever reason, I decided that Will's character, with Game On, would be interested in what Will wanted them to be interested in. There's a simple way of it doesn't hurt the game, it affects Will's enjoyment of the game, and it makes the world more real for him. Anytime that I can reward player investment with what they want to happen in the game, that's the whole point of Fontera. I feel like I can do a better presentation. One of the things I thought about after making yesterday's video was what type of game am I presenting for my players? Am I thinking more about myself or thinking about them? Am I thinking about them? I'm happy that they're happy. I'm thinking about me. I may not be happy because I may not be getting a good experience with them. I may feel bad. I may feel that I'm putting myself ahead of them. I can take it easy if I know that I put them first. So that's what I've been doing, and that's what I did with this encounter for Will. Will then went to talk to the dwarf woman, Helga. Helga was fine to sell some boots to him, and he again traded his old boots for new boots, and they were fine boots of a fine make. We decided together what type of materials would go into them and how they'd be made, with his knowledge of boot making, which I didn't have, and gave Will an opportunity to roleplay with Helga the dwarf female. I wanted to have Helga flirt with Will, just to see how Will would respond to that. Will thought it was kind of funny. I think he kind of tabled it for later and decided that it wasn't something he was interacting with right now, but he would let Helga down easy. In addition to flirting with Will good naturedly, I had Helga conspire with Will about Gaimon. Gaimon being a down on his luck leatherworker, doing his best. Helga's attitude was that leatherworkers need to stick together. Helga's attitude was that of someone who's a successful business person. There's enough to go around. There's no need to compete and be angry and be negative with each other. But Galdrella, the human noblewoman, didn't see it that way. Instead, Galdrella seemed to believe that they were taking away her business and dragging down the need of the bazaar. And this kind of showed what kind of player Will is, what kind of character Will is, what kind of player Dylan is. Will wasn't interested in interacting with Galdrella and didn't ever go talk to her. So I decided that, well, Galdrella still needed to be a relevant part of this encounter, and so I decided to put Galdrella talking over to condescend to Gaimon. Well, Galdrella condescended to Gaimon while Gaimon was working to modify a piece of armor to fit Will, who had traded his armor for new armor with a discount, which he had made himself. While he was working on that, that I think that got Game On. I think that got Will on Game On's side, and then having Helga reinforce that as Game On is a good person, reinforced the good decision Will had made to support Game On. Of course, all of this was completely subjective. I could have subverted any of these things at the start. I gave fairly neutral descriptions at the start and let him shape the encounter. He decided that I decided that since the first thing I was first person that he wanted to talk to was a demure person, I decided that that person would value hard work, such as what Will put into his armor. This shaped the rest of the encounter. It put their two extremes and Helga in the middle, and it gave a good experience, a good encounter to show what kind of player Dylan is and what kind of character Will is. So with this encounter midway through, Will decided he would punish the noblewoman for her not negative attitude and negging on Game On. So what Will did was make a stealth check over to her booth, and so I had him roll a stealth check. He rolled really high, like a 24. So I told him, yes, you make it through with no one seeing you. So he says, "What's in the booth?" And so I start describing some of her wares. The first wear I describe, he goes on and says, "I say it's a studded leather piece, very finely made, no seams visible." He decides he's going to shred it. So I said, "Make an attack roll." I set the AC at 10, his health points at 5, and said, "This is about how tough this thing is. You can attack it and do basically any amount of damage and completely destroy it." He did 4 points of damage. So I said, "You basically all but decimate this piece, tearing it to pieces, ruining all the seams, tearing it apart, and just utterly destroying it." Will seemed utterly pleased with his work and left the stall. As I said, well, the counter was it had served its purpose, leaving Galgella's stall open for Will to terrorize, and so that left nothing left for Will to do at the moment. Will decided to leave the thing. As I said, Galgella is coming back. So Galgella started coming back. Will leaves, stealth checks again, makes another high roll. So I said no one sees him. I even said a couple of the other shopkeepers see you doing this and help you along by giving you an approving look as they notice what you've done and help shield you from Galgella's view. Galgella lets out a shrieking cry as she notices what's been done to her prize piece. She then comes over to blame Game On, just as Will returns to Game On to check on his piece of armor that's being modified for him. Galgella yells at Game On, Helga comes in to intervene, and Will is in the middle, trying to reason with Galgella. I decided Galgella wouldn't see reason. She's struck with an air of entitlement and arrogancy, and will not see reason, and will look at Will, an adventurer, as a commoner, someone beneath her notice, as a noblewoman. It never came out of who she was the daughter of. Didn't really matter. Will wasn't interested in that, so it wasn't part of the encounter. What was part of the encounter was Galgella yelling at Game On for bringing the type of people who would do this kind of thing to her. Will reasoned that with her that if she hadn't left her stall to talk down to Game On, he didn't mention that part, to talk down to Will, if she hadn't left her stall open, none of this would have happened. She wouldn't see reason. So I had her making a scene, and I decided that, well, since Will had allied with Game On and Helga, I decided reinforce that. Have Helga be the mediating party. Game On too weak to stand up for himself. Helga being boisterous and proud and not scared to stand up for Game On. She came over to stand between because I didn't want this to turn into a combat encounter with Will. Will didn't seem interested in making it a combat encounter. He did threaten the woman, and although he rolled successfully on his intimidation check, I had her be physically intimidated, but not personally intimidated, if that makes any sense. So she continues with her tirade. Helga comes over to intervene and places herself between Will and Galgella. I think that made Will very happy to see that she was taking a stand for someone. I think it always makes players happy to see someone else doing what they're doing. It reinforces what they're doing, and it makes it the correct choice. That's psychology for you. So when Galgella does what she does to Game On, and Helga comes to the defense and places herself between Galgella and Will, I think that makes Will extremely happy. The encounter is going the way he wants it to. The person who has a negative attitude is having justice served to them. In fact, as Galgella is continuing to make a scene, it's drawing the guard over. Helga warns Galgella, "You're making a scene of yourself. You're embarrassing your house." Galgella won't hear any of it. Instead, she's carted off, yelling things, talking about, "You don't know who my father is." And that's the end of the encounter. Will's excited. He has new boots, new leather. It didn't cost me anything. It cost him a few pieces of gold. It was all role play. It was all flavor. I'm always happy to have a player who'll do something less than mechanically optimal for the sake of role play. So I decided Will gets DM inspiration for that. He already had it from being willing to role play in the Discord chat between games, which made him an excellent player in my book. This makes Will someone, and Dylan as a player, someone that I want to have around for a very long time. DMs always like it when someone's willing to role play in this interaction session instead of always want to beat people up. We had an issue with that yesterday. It's all perfectly well to beat things up. I think the attitude about it has to be the right attitude. If you have the attitude of we're here to have fun and destroy and kill things, that's great. If you have the attitude of we're here to derail the DM, I'm not interested in having you at my table. I had to address that yesterday. I didn't get any of that from Dylan today. What I got was a very interested and not demure player, but active and involved player. Always a thrill to see, especially in a one-on-one session. The kind of character and player you can have one-on-one session with. I don't believe you actually can have a one-on-one session with any character as long as you're willing to give them the correct environment and time. This was just the type of thing that was very easy for me as a DM to run because of the kind of player that Dylan is, the kind of character that he made in Will. A very intriguing, interesting, cool character with plenty of plenty of strengths, character strengths to go for him, and mechanical weaknesses. Character strengths and mechanical weaknesses are always a great sign of a great player. If you see those things, keep that player. So the encounter goes away. Well, once at 2, it wraps up. He gets to go out to explore the thing with the demonstration in their hand, new gear. Everyone is happy. Everyone's happy because there's another player spectating in the group, Caitlin, who spectated on yesterday's game. Caitlin, who Shannon's played with. Caitlin gets suspected on today's game. And as Will heads out into the wilderness, heads where Shannon's character is in game, this is an opportunity for Caitlin to join the game. In the meantime, between when Will leaves Trenwell and gets to where he's going in the Kobold Caves, which was interesting to me, by the way, it's always interesting to see that the players are engaging with a part of thing that isn't relevant to their backstory. The Dragonborn yesterday, it's natural they want to interact with some other Dragonkin. All perfectly well to me. I thought perfectly fine. It makes for an interesting encounter having Dragonkin interact with other Dragonkin. So when we get to the point that someone like Will is heading out to see the kobolds, I'm always thrilled because I made those kobolds. I placed them there. I put everything into work into them. I'm so happy to get more mileage out of them for more characters to interact with and more roleplay. They're fun to roleplay. They're little Klingons with all their honor, and they love thumping their chest triumphantly. So on Will's way out, I have an encounter rolled up for him. It's an easy encounter. He's by himself. Sorry, it's a very easy encounter. Something to test his attack rolls on. It's a pair of owls dueling for the attention of a female owl. They're locked in a talon grip with each other as they spin through the sky, and Will makes a couple of attack rolls. He hits one. He does almost quadruple the owl's hit points and damage from the start. And I told him, you basically decimate the owl. You render it from bottom to head and completely leave the arrow in it as it sails to the ground, and you have an owl carcass, which he gladly took with him, being a wanderer, being an outlander with a wanderer background, having the ability to forage for food or find things. I think he enjoyed interacting with the world as a wild place where he could do what he wanted. He made a character very suited to the wild, so I felt good in rewarding him with a yield of an owl from his first encounter. He made it to lake, took a sample of lake water, stored that for future memory. I decided if he would ever take a drink of that lake water, which is salt water from the ocean, that he might be unable to drink it and unable to hydrate him. Later, more on that at the end of the session. As Will made his way over the Kobold Caves, this gave Caitlin an opportunity to join the session. This wasn't planned. This was just something that happened as a result of Will going where Caitlin's character was at a time when Caitlin could join the session. So she did. Caitlin joined the session with Shannon, and Shannon and Will took a little while to warm up to each other and get the feel for each other. I explained that they would both know each other being part of the Adventurers Guild. I'm not interested in having player characters duke it out because they technically don't know each other and have no reason to trust each other. I would much rather have a built-in reason for the players to like and trust each other and have a reason to work together, at least, which they did. Shannon and Will decided to adventure together, and all is happy. So, as they set out, they interact with the kobolds a bit, find out where the Dragonborn went, and now the characters, have reasons to know the things the players know, which is always interesting to me. The merging of out-of-game knowledge, metagame knowledge, you might say, with character knowledge is always a good show. They're doing this, I think, intentionally as players. Well, they might be doing it intentionally or not. Whether or not they're doing it intentionally, irrelevant. They're doing that as players, and I think that's nice that they're giving their characters reasons to know things that they as players know. It shows that they're willing to take upon them the responsibilities of a good player. Always someone good to have around. Will and Shannon set out northwest the way the last characters went, and I more or less described the same encounters for them that they did the last one. First, they get to the Dreadrot Stump. Then they get to the Dead Patch, actually. Then they get to the Dreadrot Stump. Then they get to the tunnels, to the cave underneath where Shannon and Sir Reginald had their adventure to level 3. And then they start exploring what was previously unexplored to them, which gives Shannon the first XP of the session for that character, and Will some XP for exploration. It's at this point that Will is starting to make a note that he wants combats to give himself XP. And I had to explain that I use a model for it gives you XP for anything relevant that you do to your character, which for level 1 character is just about anything. He got 10 XP for the encounter at the bazaar with the merchants. He got 10 XP for exploring, finding the lake, finding the Cobalt Cave on his own, discovering for himself the places in between. So a total of about 55 XP, 5 XP for the owl, 50 XP for all the interaction and all the exploration. I want it to be this way because my policies generally have one session for the characters to be level 1, especially if they're experienced players. There's no reason to make these players go through multiple sessions as level 1, low powered, in a session like that, in a campaign setting like this. They can power up quickly and become the things that they want to be, and to set the kind of characters that they want to be, and help them have the better kind of experiences. This might minimize the kind of content I have close to the thing, but I don't think that's going to be a big problem. I think most players, if they're low level and experienced players or any kind of have any kind of DM experience, I think they know what goes into playing a character. I think they know what goes into making a character work. They don't need to spend long at low levels in order to get the feel for their character. So I don't generally have new characters, especially if they're played by experienced players, spend very long at low levels. Maybe if I had new players, I'd make them take a little longer to get to level 2. Maybe I would reward them with less experience for doing very basic things, but I don't think so. I think in general that policy works well for everyone. There isn't too much to learn once you already know how to play a character for level 1, especially if you're playing something you might have already played before. As a general rule, I don't think it's going to take very long to learn the game and learn the differences between level to level. I think the players are going to learn what they have access to within the first combat or two, and any more beyond that, other encounters, I think is going to be waste. Why not just let them level up? They can be stronger, they can feel stronger, they can be stronger. Encounters can become more and more trouble. They get to quickly the encounter building up power in this world before they have to face harder and deadlier threats. So my first area may be a 1 to 3 area, and the second area, as people explore outward, may be a 3 to 5 to 6 area, and so on and so forth. It may become an area things get exponentially harder as we branch out and make further and further explorations. But in this session, nothing like that's taking place. We can continue onward. The players more or less cover ground that they already know has been covered by the previous adventurers, but I wanted to make it interesting for them, so I decided to expand upon yesterday's idea by having them roll a blank d12. And at this point, I started to have some thoughts about things I want to talk about in this video, and things that maybe I wanted to modify in the future. Things like using a survival check to find places you already know of. Maybe find places that you don't already know. Any place that you already know, I feel like you should more or less be able to make it there with a little bit of time, especially if there's not a time pressure. If there's a time pressure or some kind of threat, I might make a player's roll to find a place. But if it's a plot-specific threat that they really need to not happen, or if it's a way that I can't finesse it to be a more workable failure, making failure hurt less, I think that's something that I probably wouldn't require a roll for. I would just say that, you know what, I would give them as many advantages as I could. Okay, you know what? You can help each other with this. You can take DM inspiration. You can re-roll it with your lucky feat. Do as many things as you have to be able to do those things. I'm putting as many advantages as I can in the player's ends so that when I really need to pull out all the stops, I can have it feel like they really earned that victory or that they really earned that defeat or what have you, and that it wasn't the DM ruling against them. We had a situation later in the session that I'll come back to that involved what it makes to make the DM ruling in the favor of the fun of the character for the fun of the players. The thought I had about survival checks to find places that they don't know of seems to make sense to me. It would take time to discover a place that's worth anything if you don't make a good survival check. I think there should be a standard DC for a survival check to find a new place in a direction that you go. Otherwise, what are you doing out in the thing? It doesn't need to be particularly hard DC. It doesn't need to be anything more than 10, I think. But I think there needs to be something to establish what does and does not constitute a character's discovering places. But nonetheless, it is what it is. It may modify the way I run it for new characters who aren't privy to the same kind of information that more older characters to the campaign are. But that's kind of the point of the West Marches is that once they made the map for each other, they can sort of help each other out with mapping the things out. I give them bonuses for doing that. It's something I'm incentivizing them to do. It might work against the design of the campaign if I'm making mechanics where it makes it harder for characters who really should have that knowledge because that's the way it's designed mechanically to work, than taking away that knowledge. Again, ruling against the players and against the players' fun. The next thought I had was having some sort of in-game integration for the player write-ups. Obviously, the players had knowledge that the characters didn't. These particular players were pretty good about having ways for their characters to discover that knowledge for themselves without having it given to them. A good example is what Will did at the lake. Will taking a sample of lake water was something that Will, as a character, didn't know that Dylan, as a player, probably did because he had been reading what had been going on. He knew that that water was lake. He was looking at the map. He knew that water was a saltwater lake. They put it clearly so on the map. But Will decided in character to take a sample of the water and fill his water skin as if it was drinkable water. I think Dylan did this to show that, maybe not to show, but just for the sake of the character feeling being true to role play. I think he did this because Will wouldn't know that, but Dylan does. And if Will doesn't know that and takes a sample of water thinking that it could have possible negative repercussions, he's trusting me as the DM not to punish him for making an in character decision based on in character knowledge only. This may be going on a limb here, but I think he's right to trust. I think he's right to trust me with that. I think the kind of setting and campaign shows that I'm willing to rule in favor of the players and not against the players' fun. Uh, I'm interested in what kind of in-game explanation I can provide for the player write-ups and player map that they do. The player map should be pretty easy. They make a map, they share it with each other, maybe on a shared common resource. But no matter what the situation, the players gain that knowledge. The characters gain that knowledge the players gain the knowledge in character, I should say, that other players and characters have learned for themselves. And me as a DM not correcting any of that. Their map can be as accurate as possible. I don't have to worry about that. I can narrate the same way I narrate it for them and make deviations later on. This may be something I use later on in the campaign, based on what the difference between the player map and the real map that I have and use. We also came across an interesting situation. We had a situation where I called for a survival check. Well, Shannon and Will wanted to make it. I set the DC at 16. Will made it, but Shannon exceeded it by 1 point. Now, this is where I think Caitlin's strength as a role player really shined in this. Will wanted to be the forager leading the pack, and having Shannon, a character who's not proficient in survival, nor even expected to build that, randomly roll that, sort of outdid his niche. And I think that was pretty well handled by Caitlin and as Shannon in character, by saying that, well, Shannon isn't trying to lead the way. Shannon is just trying to make sure that they know the way back, which I think was an excellent way to explain the way that extra 17, which made me think Caitlin might make a good DM. And we brought that up, later on and said, maybe we would like the chance to DM. Caitlin expressed that she would like a chance to DM. And I said, I'll support you and help give you resources if you want to try, and help give you a player pool to try from, recommend a few players, recommend a few videos, help you get into DMing, because I think DMing is fun. Along with you approach it with the right attitude, I think anyone can have fun DMing. I think too much emphasis is placed on making games realistic, and the game system isn't realistic at all. Hit points aren't a real thing. No one in real life has any hit points. You don't reach 0 hit points and then suddenly go unconscious. You're either unconscious or you're conscious. Hit points have nothing to do with it. Hit points are a made up construct to describe something that we can see in real life. Either you're conscious or you're not. Either you're alive or you're not. You have hit points or you don't. It's not a real thing that translates very well in my experience as a DM. It's not very well easy to describe. The monster loses 5 hit points. Well, suddenly they lose a limb. That puts the monster at a disadvantage and makes it less believable if I say, well, suddenly the monster makes an attack. By the mechanics of the thing, there isn't a death spiral such. So when you start losing, you lose harder. Once players mechanically start to lose hit points, as long as they have hit points left, they can keep on fighting. When they don't have any hit points, they have to stop fighting. This is how the mechanics of the game work. That isn't how real life works. You fight and you fight and you fight. If you take damage, if you take a few hits, you might still keep fighting, but you might be hard to keep fighting. It does. There in real life, there is a death spiral, and that is a fun mechanic in game. People can start to suffer and lose in real life already. Why do that to them in a game? It's not good game design. That isn't what most people, I think, come to D&D for. So I think most good DMs are the kind of DMs who will provide a fun experience for players and not worry so much about the realistics of the game. The game isn't designed to be realistic. It isn't a real life simulator. It simply isn't. It's a fantasy role-playing game. If you can focus on the role the player wants to play, I think the player is going to have a good time. So this speaks to the strength of Caitlin's role player, that she was able to role play Shannon in a way that wasn't trying to outshine Will and Will's niche. It made me thought that maybe I need to require that if a character makes such a check, that they give priority. I ask the first person that person has priority. First, I ask, who has proficiency in this check. Okay, so and so, I want you to go ahead and make this check. This still allows for if someone else wants to make the check to try and make it successful, they still can. As a matter of fact, it doesn't hurt the campaign at all. It doesn't hurt their play at all if they still get to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. Once the niche protection has presumably failed them, it's no one's fault but the dice at that point. But still, going to the person with proficiency first might help protect those niches, might help protect rewarding what those players picked those proficiencies for in the first place. They wanted you to use those things. They wanted those things to matter. Those things matter to their character, and the way they build their character in such a way that it matters to those character but doesn't matter to the campaign, it may as well not have happened. They may as well pick something else. It doesn't feel like their player choices matter. This is an easy way, I think, as a DM, I can make their agency feel rewarded by rewarding what they picked as a player. If I reward what they picked as a player, they'll have a good time. I know there's some experience. When I played a game, then I picked something, and the DM let me use it in the game, even if it was a one session, I felt rewarded for picking that. I felt like it was a good thing to pick. If I pick something and don't get to use it, I feel like I might as well pick something else. What I picked doesn't matter. And if what I picked doesn't matter, what point is it in playing the game at all? A lot of checks ensued throughout the rest of the evening's session as the players tracked down the previous players' tracks and counted some of the things that they encountered and tried to decipher it in character the best that they could. Now, the thoughts at the end of the session. At the end of the session, there was a combat. Now, the players did what they did yesterday. I asked them to roll a d12. I even made up a table that said if they roll a 1 through a 4, they get nothing. 5 through a 5 and 6 are an easy encounter. 7 and 8 a medium encounter. 9 and 10 a hard encounter. And 11 and 12 a deadly encounter. I may want to change that table around, but they continually rolled 3s and 4s. For whatever reason, these players just weren't rolling any encounters. But they did do something interesting at the end of their adventure day. A quick thought I had during this campaign sessions, I had set this campaign. Time and seasons are very important to me as a DM when these things take place, and I have been ruling these things have been taking place in late summer, toward the summer solstice. So this means that the days are getting longer, the nights are getting shorter. So I wrote that there were several more hours of daytime than there typically would have been because it's summertime, and the more light you have, the more days you can adventure by, and gave them more time in game. Something I'm thinking about timing the rest of the sessions. Sessions that have had take place during autumn or winter can have less daylight in them. Players' sessions that take place during winter or spring will have more daylight and more time to adventure and less time to rest at night when it's dark. In any case, a long rest is still 8 hours. A short rest is still an hour. So let's take 6 hours of sleep to get a long rest, 2 hours of light activity such as being on watch, benefit from a long rest. All those things mechanics still apply. Thoughts I had at the end of the session. Let's see. Talked about niche protection. Talked about making an in-game mechanic. Talked about survival checks requiring proficiency on the roll. Or requiring survival check to get a place that you know is out there but haven't been to yet, perhaps. This works into the in-game integration of what the players know that the characters will need to figure out for themselves in order for them to help them gain XP. I wrote down what the nature of these checks was. Maybe I should have written down what exactly the checks were for. All my record here tells me it's a bunch of checks that the players made. I didn't make any notice what those checks were for. My notes as a DM can evolve. Closing thoughts about today's session. I think it was a good session. I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed running it, but mostly I enjoyed it because I knew the players had a good time. Because I knew the players were having a good time from the start. I knew that things were going their way. I knew they were satisfied with the way things were happening. They believed what was happening. There was a ruling at the end of the session when the players took a long rest at the end of the day after fishing and catching food. They were very much interested in keeping their characters fed, which to me was very rewarding. Another thing that is mechanically not beneficial, but roleplay is entirely flavored roleplay. I'm always happy when the characters are taking a roleplay moment instead of a mechanical moment. I don't run a very mechanical heavy game, even though I do worry about the rules, the mechanics of things to make things feel real and like a game, and to make things feel real even though they aren't actually real. It's an interesting dichotomy we'll walk there, embracing a feeling of verisimilitude while negating reality and while negating realism. While negating realism, embracing verisimilitude. Very interesting dichotomy there for people a lot smarter than me to dissect. We had an interesting ruling come up in the session. Both of these players would have been entirely willing to go along with whatever I, as DM, decided this ruling would be. This ruling was: when you take a long rest, can you wear your armor and still benefit from a long rest? If you can't wear armor when you take a long rest, if anything happens in the middle of the night, like such would happen this encounter, then you would start your encounter with no armor and such lower AC and easier for the enemies to hit you with attacks. But this is not actually anywhere in the player's handbook and the rules, which I'm using as a basis for this game. If I don't stick to these things as a player, how can I expect, as a DM, how can I expect the players to stick by these things when I ask them to make characters based on the PHP? Since it's not a rule in the PHP, it's not a rule I'm going to make. It's not fun for the characters, I don't think, if I decide that there needs to be a punishment for them for doing well. Then doing well, there's no rule that says if you sleep in long wear armor, you incur exhaustion. I think it's a flavor thing. It's an optional rule. I'm not interested in the DM as a DM in punishing players for arbitrary things. Had I made the encounter, which was as they set up camp, they set a fire, and I decided since they set a fire, that would be a signal to whoever's out here for whoever to come out here. And I decided it would be Goblin Scouts. Goblin Scouts would come and attack in the night after seeing the light of the fire, cooking their meat, their fish that they had caught for food, um, that it would draw them. I decided that they would attack after dark. I decided they would attack after dark because it made the most sense. This was the way the thing was going, and this was what had happened. What had already gone up to this point. Um, So by the time that this encounter happened at the end of the day, I kept hoping that maybe another hour would pass and the encounter would happen, but the players kept rolling threes and fours on the dice. Such is life. Sometimes you hope for something to happen, nothing happens. I would like to make the weight of an encounter that's harder a little harder to hit. Maybe a deadly encounter to be a 12, a hard encounter to be a 10 or 11, a medium encounter to be a 9, 8, or a 7, an easy encounter to be a 6, 5, 4, or 3. A 1 and a 2 to produce nothing or a trivial encounter. I think a 1 produces nothing and a 2 produces a trivial encounter. This way, once the encounter's happened, I can stop having to roll a d12, and while the players roll a d12 and their fate's in their hands in the Matt Colville way, it's satisfying for the players to roll dice and have their fate be in their hands. It's satisfying for me to give them an encounter that they can beat based on what they decided, and it's not up to me, it's up to the game. It's a mechanic that I can use to further gamify it and take away any reproach on me as a DM for sending them up against an encounter. I didn't say Jim would give us an encounter, the dice did. Small comfort, I know, but it's what I have. I decided that since it's not a rule in 5e that you have to wear long armor while at long rest or you take exhaustion, not to rule in that way. I thought it was. I decided that I wasn't going to make up a rule in the middle of the encounter to punish players for something I didn't actually care about. I don't actually care if they start the encounter in their armor. I think it makes for a more realistic, maybe possibly believable game for some people. But I could tell my players didn't believe that. My players didn't believe that if you sleep in your armor, it causes you to gain exhaustion or to lose the benefits of a long rest when you sleep. I could tell they didn't buy that. They asked me why. Why would that do that? And I thought, well, why would that do that? I couldn't think of any logical reason why that would be the case. I just knew that it was apparently a rule and part of a tradition. Traditions are good if they enhance the player's enjoyment of the game, if they enhance the DM's ability to run the game well. Player traditions are bad if they hold us back and hold us to things that are arbitrary and players don't find fun. I could tell that the players didn't believe that sleeping in their armor should cause them to have any detriment, wake up tired. They did try to help try to come up with something that they thought that they would buy into, they'd be okay with. But in the end, I decided, why give them a detriment at all? The rules don't give them a detriment. I'm not interested in giving them a detriment. The only reason I was doing it is I thought it was the rules. I wanted to run the game in a believable way and not ignore rules for the sake of players. I don't want the players to think that I'm ignoring the rules in their benefit. I don't want the players to think that I'm giving them things for free, even though sometimes it may appear that way, or it may even actually be that way. I don't want it to appear that way. I don't want players to take advantage of it or take it for granted. I want it to feel like they earned it, that they're powerful, that it's part of the game. That's what they get for playing the game, which is what I feel they do. So I ruled that no, it's not a rule, it's not a thing. I don't care about it. It's not making the game interesting for my players. My players don't buy it. My players don't believe it. Ignore it. Forget it. It's not a matter. If parts of the game don't work for you, ignore them. If parts of the game do work for you in your group, put them in. There's nothing that says that you have to run the game exactly by the way the rulebook says. And nothing that says that you have to run a game by the way that nothing that says that if you want to ignore the rules that you have to, that you can't. And that says you have to listen to the rules. There's also nothing saying that you need the rules at all. The rules are there as a construct. They're there as a guideline. They're there to help facilitate the game. The rules aren't in charge of the game, though. The DM is. If the players don't have a good time, they're not going to blame the rules. They're going to blame me because I ruled. I made a ruling. And while in D&D, the rules may be a good guideline, the DM's law is absolute. And if I want to hold to that standard, which I do, if I want to hold to that and be able to rule in the games, I need to be able to prove that I'm willing to do it, whether it's good for the game, whether it's good only for me or good for the players. I wanted to prove that I would forego rules that aren't actually rules, that would be detriment to the players, that would be detrimental to their fun. That no, because it wasn't even a rule. I wanted to prove that the rules matter, so that when I use the rules in a way that makes the game more believable for the players, that it's actually how it would have happened. That it's more believable for them. That increases verisimilitude for them. I didn't want them to come away feeling like whatever happened was arbitrary because the DM said so. If I decide that they win an encounter because they really need to win, then they win. And they don't know that I'm making it happen so that the goblin that they fight has less hit points than they really do. Because I want this player to roll a death kill on this thing because the higher level player has already rolled a death kill on their character and the best and the Puma companion, which happened in that combat. The 3 goblin scouts who come upon them in the night as one of them is sleeping. I also decided that, well, since we noticed that the Puma has advantage on perception checks that rely on smell, I decided, yes, the goblins would have some sort of smell that would alert someone who would enable Bastet to make a perception check on that. Well, while the goblins succeeded in their stealth roll against the person on watch's perception check, they did not succeed in their stealth roll against the perception check to smell them. This was something I felt could give them a reason. Here's what could happen. If the player is prone and asleep by the player's own mistake in the game, if the player is by the rules, by the way, if the player is prone, any melee attacker gets advantage on the roll. If advantage on the roll happens to hit a 20, it crits and does double damage. Now, 2d6 might not sound much, but assume that they roll max or close to max, so 11 or 10. And then add a plus 4 to that, so 15 or 16. 16 points of damage to someone who's multiclassing and a wizard wearing light armor might not be a lot. It might not be very fun for them to lose most of their hit points in one attack. It might not add anything to the game. It might not be a good idea. I was sure that level 3 character could probably take it. I didn't see any reason to punish the level 3 character. And maybe I should have. Maybe I shouldn't have made that ruling that just because they have advantage on checks that rely on smell, that they can do that while they're asleep. I just didn't feel it was going to be a fun session and a fun end of session for it to them to come upon them, have advantage on the attack rolls. And here's the kicker, since the rogue player didn't think to try and wake up the other players, I think he thought that they would just wake up on their own. I didn't want to punish that decision. I didn't want to say, well, since he didn't wake you up, you don't get to wake up. You wake up when you get attacked on advantage. Which, I mean, the goblins still took advantage. It's just that since Bastet, the Puma was able to wake up by making a perception check to smell them, it just meant that when the attack was made with disadvantage, the player could then do something about it the next round. It didn't really make any flavorful, it didn't really make any mechanical difference. Had the goblin on their surprise round attacked Shannon and critted for some, I'm pretty sure Shannon would have lived. I think I had a fear that Shannon wouldn't live. As a matter of fact, I can pull up Shannon's character sheet and see if Shannon would have lived. Theoretically, had the goblin critted that attack, done 2d6 damage plus 4, which was the regular scout stat block, I'm not sure it would have really caused Shannon any great grief. I think Shannon could have probably gotten along without having to worry about it. But I worried about it. That's not what I want to look at. Copy the text. Let's go to the website. I'm going to pull up Shannon's character sheet and see, for the sake of this video, whether Shannon could have survived that initial attack and had it really made a difference. I was afraid that if I if I let these goblins get this attack off, then it would cause a death spiral. Then it would cause a problem. Shannon has a maximum of 20 hit points at level 3. Had that attack hit for that 15-16 damage, it would have left them with very much. Had one more attack hit, it would have rendered them unconscious. Shannon's dealing with healing magic. It might have quickly turned into a death spiral there had the goblins gotten lucky. I could have then said that if the goblins knew the goblins' attacks had failed, that would have, as I said it, since I'm rolling behind the screen, the players could have known that it could have been become a thing. Either, I think, with that in mind, I think either I need to make it so that I roll on the open no matter what, or if I'm going to fudge dice, then I'm not going to fudge the rules. I either fudge the dice, or I make up the rules and play with other characters. I think rolling in the open is more conducive to the spirits of Westmarch's campaign. I think it works better with what I'm doing, and I think what happens to the players, it makes it more real for them. I think I need to stop rolling behind the screen. As much as I like to roll dice, and hope that the players trust me, I think I need to show the dice being rolled in the open. I think the player characters need to see the attacks really rolled as they rolled, and things really would have come down the way they came down. I think that next session, the characters really need to be able to see that it's real, that the game is real, that what happens in the game is real to the characters. It's believable for them because they're invested in their characters. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to rule that Shannon and Sir Reginald are 20% of the way through level 3, while the rest of the level 1s who came out on these adventures are level 2 now, which is what happened at the end of today's session. At the end of today's session, they fought off the Goblin Scouts, not the Kobolds. They fought off the Goblin Scouts with pretty handily. I did rule that a death blow was made. This might have given my level 1 player more option to shine with me having to fudge less. I think if I give as many boons and advantages as I'm giving, I think if I rule as many ways that favors the characters that I'm ruling, I think I need to let the dice fall where they may. Attacks, damage, whatever they may do, they do. Whatever they roll for attack, whatever they roll for checks, they roll. I think I need to roll in the open. I don't have to care if the players roll in the open or not. I think I need to roll in the open to prove this is what's actually going to happen in the game. What happened in the games is real. I'm not editing it, fudging it, which I have been. That what happens in the game is real. It's a funny thing. When I mentioned to a fellow DM friend that I had fudged the dice, he had a reaction like, "Really? I can't believe you did that." He didn't say it, but I could tell from his reaction that he thought that was crazy. He thought that I had done something that I had to do to keep the players alive, when I probably didn't really have to do it. The players probably still would have survived. Had they not survived, I'm not sure they would have had any fun. Had I been rolling open from that, they might not have done the things that they had done. They might have decided to do the things that they had done. They might have thought there isn't a safety net, the DM can't decide to change it, and most of these players are experienced players. They probably know about fudging dice. Some of these players are DMs. They probably have fudged dice themselves. I think I need to prove to the players that I'm not fudging dice, even though I have been. I think I need to stop doing that. I think I need to show to the players these things are what they roll. They roll what they roll, and the dice fall where they may, and speed up the game in that way. I'm getting better at running the game in Roll20. I'm getting better at putting together tokens, drawing a quick battle map if I don't have one prepared. I did have more maps prepared to use, more things that I was able to do while the characters were role playing with each other, and that was great. Unfortunately, it did cause me to miss some of the things that they had said. Sometimes the players would say something, and I didn't quite catch it because I was trying to prepare something behind the screen. Not the player's fault, just something I'm trying to do to make the game flow better. A little more preparation. I'm fine with improvising content. Maybe I need to prepare more material. Maybe to have backup maps. Random maps ready to play, including another set in a forest map, any forest map. I did have one made, I just didn't have it uploaded in time to use it. It would have taken time to stretch it and size it, and now that it's made, I can take time real quick into Roll20 to try and make it work. But this video has already gone on for 43 minutes. I've already recorded one session before. I sat for 20-30 minutes talking to the camera and realized I hadn't been recording. Realized I'd start all over again. This has taken me a while. Hopefully, the more time I invest at the front here, I'll get more out of later on when I learn how to do these things in a better way. Well, that was today's session. A level 1 player got to level 2. A level 3 player got 20% of the experience they needed to level 3. And tomorrow, another session takes place. 3 days running D&D in a row. Not that I mind. It's actually quite nice to get a lot of experience as a DM, It's nice to make these videos with my thoughts afterwards so I can document them, learn from them, gain perspective on them. When I hear them played back, I gain perspective. When I watched the video from last night, this morning, and this afternoon, when I listened back to it, heard myself say those things I said, why did I say those things? I need to gain perspective. It helped me gain perspective for today's session and make it more fun for my players. A lot of lessons were learned today. A lot of questions were raised about how mechanics will work in my future in my games. I think I've come to a decision on a few things, though. I want to protect niches. I want to be able to use, I want to be able to the players to make investments when they make an investment in a proficiency and an ability, that proficiency matters. And I think giving the players the chances to do the things I do with roleplay will apply here. If they can believably explain to me how this check will work, they can do the check they want to do. Players often want to be able to make a check. Players often want to say, can I make this check? Players often say, I make this check. Players often say, can I do this? Can I roll to do blank? I think as DMs, we often attribute that players like rolling dice. I don't think that's the case. Players, I think, do enjoy rolling dice. It's fun to roll dice and see what happens. I think the important thing is that players, the agency of players, is valued and respected. What a player thinks and wants to do with their character matters. The choices that a player makes when they make a character, matter for that character to play the game. So I think the principle I learned was skill challenges, asking them to describe how they want to do this to how the thing can be applied here. The principle is the same. Asking them to do something in a way that to describe the believable way to do something is a way to add their agency. Asking the players to describe how their attack kills a monster. In a game like this, I think I can tell them the HP of the monsters. I tell them the AC of checks. I tell them the AC of attack rolls. I tell them the DC of checks. I tell them the DC of saving throws. Why don't I tell them the HP of monsters and let them describe and narrate their own kills? It makes the game go faster. It doesn't take anything away from me. I was already going to let them do that. If I just show them the HP, stop fighting the die rolls, and see what happens. So tomorrow, that's what I'm going to do. The GM screen comes down. The rolls get made in the open. The dice fall where they may. I do need to let the players know, the players who played last night, that characters would have gotten a level of XP now that I figured this out with Will. That the characters would have gotten to level 2. That includes Kakov the Warlock. Includes Kurt the Barbarian. That includes Ligard and Sean the Dragonborns, the Paladin and Cleric respectively. And let them know that their characters have leveled up and experienced throughout their long rest as they survive a long rest. And then their characters all come together. All 7, 8 of the characters. The previous 2, the 6 new who've joined, anyone who comes in for tomorrow, can all join in the fun as long as they've role-played up to this point. This values the respect and choices that they made as players to play the game when they want to play them. And it values me, and it lets me DM more to learn more how to be a better DM. I've learned more from Fontera than I have from any campaign I have in the past. I've worried less about content. I've worried more about the way I run a game. I don't have to worry about content. I can improvise it. I can spin it in a way that when I describe it to the players, they believe that it's real. Yeah. I think that sounds good. I think the players are going to have fun tomorrow. I think it's going to be a great session. But either way, the dice will fall their may. I'll respect the players' agencies and the choices of the characters that they've made. I'll help them get the most that they want out of the characters, help them craft the stories they want to craft. I'll ask them, when they're traveling over land, to make a skill check. Make a skill check of their choice, they're proficient in. Any skill you're proficient in, add it, see what you can do. Let the characters make the choices they want to make. Sure, it provided some interesting explanations in yesterday's when Sean wanted to make an insight check to make a general inspection, but it did provide me an explanation to provide an opportunity to explain what gains experience for that character and that character's player in this world in a way that isn't them reading it in a document. It's them playing the game and learning the world, learning the rules of the world, which is how the characters would be doing it. Yeah, I feel good about that. Give priority to those preferences too. If I need to make a check if I know I need to make it, and I know I want a particular check that multiple characters could make, I need to say, so and so, do you have proficiency as a skill? Can you make a check for me, please? And then if they don't succeed in it, someone else can make a check. Someone else can contribute their help. They can take help to get. They can help the character. They can say that they help the character to give them advantage. They can roll up their own if they want to. And this way, I'm valuing those who have proficiencies, especially those who have the same proficiencies, to help each other out if they fail. They have a safety net when they travel with other people, don't they? They get better when they adventure in a group. Why don't they do it when they're roles? I think that's a way to encourage the kind of group play I'm looking for here in Fontera. D&D is a group game. It can be played with one player character, but it also has a DM. It's a group, whether it's a group of 2, a DM and a player, or it's a group of 8, a DM and 7 players. It's all the same. D&D is a group game. It requires other people. This kind of setting rewards player buy-in already. This way, it will also reward grouping with other people, and being willing to adventure with others. Well, folks, we'll see what happens. Until tomorrow, see ya.